Opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez won the 2024 Venezuelan presidential election, despite Nicolas Maduro claiming victory. The United States, and most of the free world, has openly declared that they recognize him as president-elect, and Gonzalez has declared that he will assume the presidency of Venezuela come January 10, 2025. Hey everybody, it's Zach here, and I'm going to share some thoughts, my predictions of what we can expect from an Edmundo Gonzalez presidency. This is what we can expect. Yes, he will assume the presidency of Venezuela on January 10th, but not in Venezuela. He will do it from exile, probably inside of one of the embassies, or it could be somewhere else. It really doesn't matter, because as long as the country already recognizes him as president-elect, then they will recognize him as president, as long as he does some kind of an oath. And he will probably do it on a copy of the Constitution of 1999. It's an illegitimate constitution, but that's the one that most of the world recognizes as the Venezuelan constitution. And he is going to follow the same playbook as Juan Guaido. So he is going to completely reject armed intervention, even though that's what hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans are openly calling for, at their own risk, by the way, at their own risk, because any type of post that the regime doesn't like will make somebody considered automatically a terrorist. And we're going to see an interim government 2.0. I don't know what that's going to look like necessarily, because unlike when Guaido assumed the interim presidency in 2019, there is no legitimate National Assembly. There is no legitimate Supreme Court in exile anymore, because the opposition already voted back in, I believe it was 2022 or 2023, to dissolve the interim government. So there is no interim government right now. There's only a unitary platform. But if there's going to be an interim president in exile, then they're going to put together some kind of an interim government. They're going to ask the United States for another $1 billion of humanitarian aid and democratic aid, which we will see the U.S. probably dole out over the next 5 years. And ultimately, they are going to return to dialogue with the regime. And despite all the dirty tricks that the regime is going to pull in the next negotiations, and despite all the declarations from the U.S. State Department, and despite Edmundo, the new president, and despite Maria Corina Machado and all these other opposition figures declaring that the whole world is watching the regime violate its own laws and international laws, the opposition is ultimately going to go to the 2025 regional elections with the regime still in charge and under the regime's rules. The opposition sat out the 2017 regional elections, which in my opinion was the correct choice, because those were illegitimate elections completely. But they participated in the 2021 regional elections, and in order to do so, they made concessions to the regime. So even though even though OFAC, the U.S. Treasury Department, just applied new sanctions on Venezuelan oligarchs and security force individuals who are directly connected to Operation Knock Knock, we're probably going to see some type of sanctions relief before the 2025 regional elections happen, as a show of good faith, so that the regime allows the opposition to participate in those elections, even though those elections will be rigged, and the regime will give itself its own party the majority of the governorships and the mayorships of those elections. And we're going to see some more false opposition. However, I do recommend that people pay attention to a particular Venezuelan figure, Eduardo Bitar. This guy is authentic. He has really resisted both the regime and the false opposition for almost a decade now, just over a decade actually. And while he is right-wing, I find that to be personally distasteful. He is the only one who has an accurate prescription for how to get rid of this cancer, which is the Venezuelan regime and its overlords in the Cuban regime, and the military advisors from Russia and Iran and from Hezbollah, and all the terrorist groups and the transnational drug traffickers and the criminal gangs and the Colombian guerrilla groups, All of those can only be gotten rid of by force. And Eduardo recognizes that there are hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans, of the millions of Venezuelans in exile, who would join a Venezuelan liberation army in a heartbeat and fight to liberate their country. I don't know if they're going to get that opportunity, but that's what Bitar advocates for, and that's what I agree with 100%, because these people, these thugs, they will not leave peacefully. They will not respect elections that they lose. They have already lost multiple elections, and they've stolen every one, or they've nullified the results of elections whose results they didn't like. They're not going to leave peacefully. So, yeah, to summarize everything, Edmundo Gonzalez is going to be interim president. We're going to see some kind of interim government 2.0. They're going to ask the U.S. for more money, which a lot of them will steal and squander on a bunch of BS. We will see them dialogue with Chavismo. We will see them ask the U.S. to make concessions to the Venezuelan regime. And ultimately, they will participate in the 2025 regional elections. And we will see this cycle happen every time Venezuela has some type of elections going on, from the local to the national. Thank you for watching Venezuela Explained, and if you haven't already done so, please hit like and subscribe. It really does help out this channel so that this video gets pushed in the algorithm and more students of international affairs like you can hear what's really going on in Venezuela.